Welcome back, everyone, to The Doctor Will See You Now. As we've been saying, the important thing about these sessions over the next, what will it be, 10 months now, I think we'll be at this, if you'll stay with us, is for those authors that were going to be with us for Newcastle Noir 2020 this year, who, of course, we couldn't bring over to the UK. We're going to bring them to you via the wonders of the internet. So you get a chance to hear from the authors that would have been there. And this evening, it gives me great pleasure to introduce international best-selling author Alex Shaw. Alex, welcome to the programme. Hi.
Hi, well, thank you for having me.
It's a total pleasure. It's a total pleasure. For anybody who's watching who is not familiar with Alex, Alex has a very popular series with a very popular protagonist known as Aidan Snow. If you like your crime fiction high octane, then I think Alex's series is for you. Alex, I know we're going to talk about more recent work that is coming out, but I wonder, because I don't think we can talk about the author that you are without talking about Aidan Snow. And so could you give us this guy's resume? Could you tell us who he is and why you wanted to create a series, a protagonist, with this guy and what he means to you?
Okay, yeah, Aiden Snow, he is a former member of the SAS, and he was injured on an operation in Poland. And after that, he left the army, went to university, and decided he wanted to teach. And so he became a PE teacher, PE and foreign languages. And at the start of book one, Cold Blood, we catch up with him whilst he's teaching in Ukraine. And this is 10 years after he's been in the SAS. Still quite a young man, but he's obviously, he's teaching abroad now. And I'm not going to lie, some of his experience is based on my own experience. I wasn't in the SAS. Flat feet, you see. I couldn't be in the SAS. But I was in Ukraine and I was teaching. And when I was in Ukraine, I was reading lots of books because I didn't have a television. And I was reading lots of books about the SAS and spy books, etc., and crime thrillers. And nothing was set in Ukraine. So I thought, okay, I've become an expert on Ukraine. What type of books do I love? Well, I like ones that have a kind of strong character, a kind of like more like a kind of thinking man's James Bond or Jason Bourne. Okay, I'll create one. And so over the course of my years in Ukraine, I started to get the idea of Aiden Snow, and I started to base him kind of partly on myself. We lived in the same flat, we kind of went to the same places, and I was following the older kind of advice, write what you know. So I knew about Ukraine, so I wrote about Ukraine. And so it just took off from there, really, and that was why I started to write Aidan Snow, and why I kind of still enjoy writing him. I haven't put down his He's going to appear again, let me say, in the future, perhaps.
Excellent, because I know we're going to talk about what is due to come out soon, and I was a little bit worried in case we'd seen the end of Aiden, but you promised me that is not the case, yeah?
It's not,
no. Lovely. Now, again, just to say that Aiden Snow, readers can catch him both in novels, but you've also included him in some short stories as well. Yeah?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about your experience of producing, that different kind, that length of story. Why do it? And if you enjoy doing the difference.
Yeah. When I've written the short stories, it's kind of for several purposes, really. It's been to kind of give readers something to kind of keep them interested in me in between the novels. And it's also been, I've been asked by people, can you write a story for me for an anthology? And also it's been when I had an idea which was smaller or focused on something smaller that I thought, okay, this is a great story. but this is kind of rather an episode of a TV show than a feature film. And so that's why I've written the short stories. And I must say I enjoy them. But the funny thing is, I kind of plot my short stories more than I do my novels. Well, at least I used to.
Mm-hmm.
But I always manage to find the end of a short story, and I find it really quite easy to write them when I get going. And yeah, I mean, they're a different medium. Sometimes I'll throw in a character there who people have said, "Oh, I'd like to see more of that character," so I'll put him in the short story. And it also gives me kind of a platform to explore a new character. To see if people like the character in the short story, I might put him in the novel. You see, as well.
Bring them back, yeah,
Yeah,
and bring them
yeah.
back. Yeah. Now you mentioned to us the idea of setting Aiden there in Ukraine. And I wondered, as somebody who lives and works outside the UK, how hard was it for you to get a publisher? You being outside, how hard was it for you to get a publisher to take on your writing?
Yeah, I don't think it was difficult in terms of where I was geographically. I think it was more in terms of where the story was set. I mean, when I first started writing about Aidan Snow, I had to self-publish the first two books because at the time Ukraine wasn't really in the papers, or it wasn't in the headlines. People weren't really setting stories there or writing about it. And I just did because no one else was doing it, and I enjoyed it. And so I tried for a year to get a publisher. I think this was back in 2008, and I couldn't. And so I self-published. And then when Kindle came along, I found myself being one of the very first UK self-published authors to be on Kindle. So suddenly, for a while, I was doing quite well in the UK with my Kindle books. So I quickly hurried up and wrote the second one. And then I thought, okay, well, there's only so much I can do unless I want to kind of be a one-man business and do promoting and everything. And so I decided, okay, I want to try again for a publisher, and I approached several. And luckily, I was taken on by one publisher. I was taken on by Endeavour Press, and I wrote the third book for them. And then 2 years later, when Endeavour Press went into voluntary liquidation, I approached HQ, part of HarperCollins, and they said yes, and they took me on. So I fell off my chair, and then when I got up, I signed the contract. And so yeah, I've been with them now for 2 years.
Mm. What I love about your story is it's that road to being published has not just been one direction or one path, and the not the not giving in, or the being open to what might happen, and and talking to authors, and finding out that I think for everybody there is a way to go, and it's not right for each person, and where are you at now with that? I mean, do you find it easy, because now that you are being published and not self-publishing, do you find that getting your work out there and getting your work out internationally is easier than it was when you were doing it yourself?
It's slower to get things out because obviously it has to go through a kind of like a committee, but yeah, I mean, it's really nice to have the backing of a publisher because yes, there are some fantastic independent authors or indie authors, and what they do is fantastic, but it's difficult in the end of the day really to be able to match a publisher's budget really for marketing and advertising and the reach they have. And so yes, I think my books are reaching a wider audience now than they were, and I'm really pleased about that. I have got a German publisher as well. I approached them individually, directly. I approached them directly before I had the HarperCollins deal, and so I think that kind of made me quite well known in Germany in certain circles.
I think that's no bad thing either, given the voracious appetite of the Germans for all things crime fiction. As again, that idea, that wise move to do something like that, where there is a a public that's waiting. If I can move briefly to the fact, though, and this is what intrigued me when I was looking into what you've done. The notion of, okay, crime fiction, yeah, but young adult time travel involving terrorism, espionage, apocalyptic fiction involving vampires. Are you still doing that? Or was that a moment you had an itch and you needed to scratch it?
Yeah, well, the time travel comedy about double glaze, about a teenage time traveler who goes on work experience in double glazing. That was based on an idea I had with a friend of mine, I think when I was about 17, and we wrote a stage play. And then years later, I adapted that, turned it and rewrote it a bit, turned it into a YA novel, just to see if I could. I mean, I don't promote that, so it doesn't sell. Although there is one school in America that for a couple of years kept on buying a whole class set. So somewhere in America for a couple of years there were 40 children being forced to read that book. So I don't know, I don't know who they are. I've never heard from them. But thank you.
Yeah. If you're watching this, please can you let us know? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the Total Force Vampire. I was sitting with a friend of mine, and he's a real kind of Hammer House of Horror aficionado. And he was getting annoyed by all these kind of vampire books and films that had, teenage vampires, romantic vampires, vampires that kind of sparkled and things. And he said, I want a proper vampire. And I must say, we were in the pub at the time, the pair of us, and I said, okay, well, why don't we write a vampire book? And so he wrote a series based on alternative 1970s with vampires in London. And I wrote one with an American soldier who gets bitten and becomes like the ultimate soldier, and I wrote that, and I got lots of letters from America. Americans really enjoyed that, and I do keep on saying I'll write a second one. And now that I've got an agent, I've been with my agent now for just under a year, and they like that book as well. So once all my other things and my other contracts are finished or completed, maybe I'll get back to that. So I don't know, maybe in a year's time I might do another vampire book. I don't know, but see,
We'll see.
They're fun to do.
Yeah. And again, that idea of being able, you have a series, you focus on the character, but there's other things bubbling away. I quite, I admire authors who've got that flexibility. I think it keeps writing fresh. If you're not just down one track. But that's just a personal favourite kind of thing. Now, just to come back to Aiden Snow and the kind of scrapes, shall we say, that he gets into. The research that you needed to do for that, how much did you try out yourself? Were you able to try out, sort of thing? And if you can give us maybe a little flavour of the kind of things that he gets involved with.
Yeah. I mean, in the second book, Cold Black, he is on a trade mission with the British government in Saudi Arabia. And I've been on 3 trade missions with the British government to Saudi Arabia. And so the places he was going and the things he was experiencing whilst pretending to be a hearing aid salesman are the same things I did when I was a hearing aid salesman. I used to sell hearing aids for Siemens export market a while ago. And there's a scene whereby he goes to his agent's house, and it finds out the guy has got an Oxbridge accent. And that's basically based on fact. I was driven by this Lebanese guy who was selling our hearing aids to go and meet his boss. I went into this big, huge walled villa with like the greenest grass I've ever seen. And I was met by a guy whose English was better than mine. And so that was quite an enjoyable evening. But in terms of some of the scrapes he gets involved with, I mean, he gets kidnapped. Well, he sees his colleague get kidnapped. And luckily, he manages to follow the kidnappers out into the desert, and he almost dies trying to find them. And for that, I kind of, I'm in the desert now, but back then I kind of based it on the fact that I'd been driving in the desert with my agent who was showing me around. And the intense heat and seeing the camels and seeing the Bedouin, and I thought, okay, well, something needs to be set out here, and that kind of gave me the idea for that. So now I've come full circle. Now 10 years later, I'm in the desert.
Maybe I was going to say, like they say, be careful what you wish for. It's almost be careful what you write, because you never know where it might take you.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice moment for us to stop and just celebrate the fact that coming very soon to hopefully to a bookshop near us is your new series, the title Total Blackout, and you bring to us a new protagonist, an ex-SAS trooper, Jack Tate. And so, first of all, I'd like to ask you, why make the shift? When did that moment come that you knew that you just had to stop with Aiden and move on to Jack? And what are you trying to do with this, which I presume will be a series? I hope it'll be a series. What will you do with this that you haven't done with Aiden? Does all that make sense?
No, it does, yeah. I wanted, my Aiden Snow things have been very international, and they've been kind of, majority of the narrative's been based in Ukraine, but then they kind of jump around a bit. And I wanted to try to write something that was kind of set in one country more, so that was kind of set in, so I chose the States. And I wanted a character who was a bit rougher around the edges, a bit kind of, less of a thinker than Aiden Snow. I mean, he thinks, but he's someone who's kind of a bit rougher. I mean, Aiden Snow, was a soldier, then went to university, and then kind of, was polished a bit, and comes from, his parents are diplomats, so he's kind of a bit of an odd soldier. Whereby this guy, he left school straight into the army and went to the SAS. I mean, that's not to say he's not a thinker or hasn't got the intellect, but he's a bit rougher, he sees things slightly differently. And so I wanted to try and explore things with him, but also the last Aiden Snow novel had Aiden Snow trying to find a portable nuclear bomb. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to need a bit of time distance from that, because how do you top a portable nuclear bomb? And then I started to read, and I saw a few kind of people were talking about EMPs, the electromagnetic pulse. And I thought, okay, that's another new weapon that might, might eventually, arrive. And so I thought, okay, well, let's have my character trying to stop somebody from setting off an EMP, and see where we go from that. So I put them all together, and thereby I had the character of Jack Tate being in the US, allegedly on holiday, because his brother works there at the British Embassy in Washington, so he's on there, he's there as well, and running into a group who he thinks are up to no good. But before he can do anything, there's an EMP and the lights go out, and suddenly, he's trying to battle someone without the aid of any electronics. And so, I thought, okay, what can I do with this? And it was nice to kind of research certain places in America, and yeah, it is the first in a series. I've been asked to write a series, and I've been asked to try and make them based in America. So the second one is based in America, even though the first scene at the moment takes place in Monaco, but the second scene and the rest of it does take place in America. I was writing a scene today set in Texas.
Texas, okay. So the first novel then, Total Blackout. Whereabouts in the States is it?
It's in Maine, in a place called Camden, and funnily enough, Jack Tate is from Camden in London.
I like the link.
So there's a running joke there, and he says, I'm sure there's a name for people that visit the twin of their hometown, but I don't know what it is. So, he's doing that, and yeah, then he goes to Washington, and that's where it kind of, the climax of the thing happens around Washington. there's an airport there where the Wright brothers used to fly from, and some of the action takes place in the airport there. So I've kind of thrown some American history into it as well.
So when you were on the research, and especially for this notion of the electromagnetic pulse, was it difficult to find the information? I mean, do you think anybody's, cottoned on to the fact that you've been looking at this? I'm just wondering, when authors really immerse themselves, and especially this kind of cutting edge stuff of where weapons may lie, and where the destruction of humanity might fall, you've not had a knock at the door, or you've not felt any strange, things on your laptop as you've researched.
Well, that's the big joke, isn't it? The FBI or whichever country you're in come knock at your door to arrest you, because they think you're a terrorist. And no, 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 I'm an author. I'm an author. Look, check my browser.
Yeah.
No, no one has. I mean, I do get asked questions sometimes where I kind of pick things up from. And with the EMP, I won't lie. I mean, a lot of the EMP was the effects was straight off the internet. Because obviously, as far as we know, the actual big EMPs, bombs don't exist. I mean, it's a byproduct of a nuclear weapon, or it takes a huge amount of power to generate the pulse that kind of knocks other electron devices out. And so, save for a nuclear weapon or the film The Matrix, I don't think you're going to find them anywhere really. I have been asked before where I've kind of got my information from about the Ukrainian security forces or people, etc. And I do have a few people I can talk to about that, people that still live there, or I've got a relative who's quite well placed who can tell me things, etc. And a friend of mine who used to work in the British Embassy in Kiev, who appears in my book as himself with a different name. Although I didn't realise he was a man with MI6 until 20 years later. He didn't tell me. But so for a joke, he's in the book, and then I found out, oh dear, I almost pay your cover.
I think what I wanted to say as well is that, Alex, please, if ever you disappear, is it that we know where to go looking? So when is Total Blackout out? When is it available?
It's up for pre-order now. And the ebook is out on the 25th of September, and the paperback is out 2 months after that.
Mm-hmm. Great. So hopefully as well, hopefully the world will be a little less bound, and people will be able to get out there and get those books. Are you planning at all to come back to the UK for its release, or will you do it online?
I don't think I could get back in time for the ebook, to be honest, because at the moment I can get into the UK, but the quarantine rules about getting back into Qatar are a bit strange at the moment. At the moment they're saying I'd have to go into a hotel for 2 weeks at my own expense, rather than self-isolate. So,
yeah.
And of course, we're not talking about a bed and breakfast or travel lodge. We're talking somewhere that's quite expensive. I'll be in the room, unable to just get in the room for 2 weeks. So I think that kind of rules out September. But if things have settled down, I would love to see if I could come over, and for the paperback launch. That's something I need to discuss with my obviously my editor and my agents and see what to do. That'd be fun.
Yeah. I think I hope that is possible. Now, when we were talking before we started recording, you were telling me though that the arrival of Jack Tate isn't the only project that you have bubbling away there nicely. Tell us what else awaits us.
Yeah, I've also signed another contract with HQ HarperCollins for another series, and Aiden Snow appears in the first book in this series, which is already written, and that's partly set in Ukraine. But he's there as a supporting character, even though he's in it for quite a lot. So I think Aiden Snow fans will be happy to see him in that.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And it slots in. It slots in between the second and third books, so it slots in between Cold Black and Cold East. But he's only part of the story because the main character in that book is a French intelligence operative, a female French intelligence operative by the name of Sophie Racine, and she is a character that I've been dying to write for a while. And so, yeah, the first book, she gets sent on a mission to assassinate a traitor, a French traitor who's now working for the Russians in eastern Ukraine. And so she's in eastern Ukraine, and who should she meet? I wonder, but Aiden Snow. And so they're like two missions, and they cross over in eastern Ukraine. And that book is tentatively titled Traitors, and I've got a publication date for that of June next summer, so June 21.
Wonderful.
So yeah,
I'm hoping you can be talking to us about that at Newcastle Noir next year, and I'm hoping that there might be even advanced copies, because seriously, I've loved Aidan Snow, and I can't wait to meet Jack Tate, but to meet Sophie. Sounds very, very exciting. We've mentioned, and I think your work says it for itself, the international aspect of what you do, of what you bring to crime writing. And I'm intrigued by the fact that you are a member, are you not, of the International Thriller Writers?
That's right. Yeah, the ITW.
Yeah. For anybody who's not familiar with that organisation, what is it, other than I know what it says, who belongs to it, but what does that organisation do? And again, you being part of that, what does that bring to you and your writing?
Yeah, I mean, they're very much the American version of the Crime Writers Association. And so I'm a member of both organisations, but in the States, the International Thriller Writers Organisation is, it's the one that's known. They have a huge conference each July in New York, which is a mixture of kind of like Crime Fest and Newcastle Noir. But along with that, they have like you can go on a tour of the FBI and learn about forensics. They have actual courses to learn about thriller writing, etc. And it's just really nice to be part of that, because I think it's kind of a rubber stamp to say my books are a certain standard, i.e. I'm published by a publisher who's recognised. And they're very good at promoting each other and kind of helping struggling authors. When I met Lee Child at Crime Fest a few years ago, he's the president of the ITW, along with a couple of American authors, and so he was really friendly, and they just wanted to start something in the States that kind of would really celebrate thriller fiction, and that's basically it. And it's just nice to be able to rub shoulders with these people that are huge stars, but because you're a member of the same organisation, they talk to you.
Yeah, I love that. I think again, that idea of being able to share stories and promote one another and support people, I think it's vital, and I really enjoy that about the crime fiction world. I know this year is a very unusual year, but are you normally able to attend that annual gathering?
Well, that's that's a funny thing. This summer was going to be I was going to potentially go this summer, but I didn't. And because it's in New York, a lot of the really international thriller writers don't go to it. It's a lot of it is Americans and Latin Americans and Canadians that go there. And a couple of years ago, Peter James, who's one of the presidents as well, he was involved with a couple of other authors in the UK of trying to set up a British branch so we could meet up, etc. And we met up, and that was fun. But I'd really love to go there one year. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if next year is too early, perhaps. But I think when everything opens up, want to go over there again. You know, I don't mind sitting on a 12-hour flight as long as I can go. You know?
Exactly, and you have, I mean, you have the perfect excuse, do you not? That, you know, you've got a new series that's set in the States, so it's good for research. Yeah, always helps.
That's it.
Yeah, you know, because I've thought as well, you know, with lockdown life, and we've all learned to do so much more in this way than we ever did. But, and I know about resources and the environment, but I still wonder, you know, is there a substitute from being able to go to a place, meet with people, do the research for writing? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do love going to the places that I'm actually writing about. So, I mean, I used to write on location. I used to go to a place and sit there with pen and paper and write my scenes there, and kind of, you know, look around at the colours of doors, or kind of, you know, the shops that were nearby, or, you know, the monuments, etc. And obviously, you know, when you can't do that, you use Google Street View.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, you do that. But yeah, one of the great things of being a writer is observing people. And many years ago, when I was, I think I was 15 at the time, it was my dad. We went out to Yorkshire. I was a work experience. Went to a car showroom because he was in charge of lots of car showrooms. He used to go around the country checking on them for, you know, for his company. And and this is really bizarre. We were walking through a place. I think it's called Eckham White. It was in Yorkshire somewhere. And Alan Bennett was sitting on a bench with a pen or pencil and a piece of paper. And the reason I knew it was Alan Bennett is because I've been watching, you know, Talking Heads, you know, oh, cookie under the table and all this stuff. And I went, Dad, that's Alan Bennett. And he said, who? And I had to explain who Alan Bennett was. And so, so for years I kept watching all this stuff and trying to read all this stuff, because I thought, okay, you know, if I ever see a fat father and son from the south of England appear in your story, I know it was me, but I didn't.
Oh, Alex, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to draw our time together to a close. I really thank you for, you know, telling us about your experiences, your inspirations, your new projects. It is lovely to spend time together, and like I say, I do hope that you know, that we'll be able to gather in Newcastle. But for now, I just want to thank everybody for watching, and thank you especially, Alex, and wish you all the very best with Total Blackout and future projects. Thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.